You find yourself outside a rather seedy establishment called the Club Nebula. You're in the alley down the side of this place and it reeks of urine and rotting rubbish. And one of your group just happens to be rustling around on the floor with his foot, comes across a severed human appendage. And it's an appendage that you recognise because attached to it still is a particular piece of tech. Yes, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're taking a look at the Mothership adventure, An Ear for Trouble. Hi, I'm Rob Poyton. Thanks for joining me today. And yes, as you may know, we're playing through our Mothership Assault Team 5 campaign at the moment. And what I'm doing is, as the party completes each adventure or module, I'm putting a review of it here up on the channel. So this does mean, of course, that there's going to be spoilers ahead. The thing with these adventures is it's very difficult to talk about them and keep them spoiler free, particularly when, as in the case of this one, they are the trifold adventures. So everything you need as a GM is on two sides of A4. Genius design, and as I've mentioned many times, I'm sure, I'm in awe of the way that the writers and designers managed to get all the relevant information in such a confined space. So the writing, artwork, design and layout on this one is all by Clive Wilkinson. I'm not sure when it was published. I think it's relatively recent. It certainly fits the latest edition of Mothership. And I'll give you a very brief outline of the outline. Then, of course, I'll give you a little warning before we get into spoiler territory. And also, I want to explain how I modified this, particularly to suit our campaign on Prospero's Dream. So, An Ear for Trouble. The party are in this alleyway outside Club Nebula, as we mentioned at the start, and one of them discovers an ear on the ground, a severed ear. And still attached to the ear is a piece of kit known as the flame wire plug. And it's a little bit of kit that fits onto the ear and can record things and conversations. This gives them, well, more than a clue really. This confirms who the owner or previous owner of this ear was, because at some point in the near past, the party have come into contact with a chap called Craig Wu. So that's the basic setup. Now there's a few hooks given as to why the party might be here. We have a drug involved called jelly milk. And one hook is that the players are investigating this drug and they're charged with the local law enforcement to go in, infiltrate the club, find out more about the drug. It could be they're associates of the unfortunate Craig Wu. It could be that they're just here almost pretty much by chance. Those are the basic hooks, and the adventure unfolds, of course, as the group or the team get into the club by one way or another and try and find out what's happened to Craig Wu, and possibly also what this drug jelly milk is all about and what's going on with it. Now this adventure does come with warnings of gore, drug use, horror, violence. You know, it is Mothership after all. But I still think it's good to see these warnings put on things. So that's the basic outline. Let's get into spoiler territory and find out what happened with our particular party on Prospero's Dream. This is one of the first adventures I bought for my Assault Team 5 campaign because it revolves largely around the manufacture and selling of drugs through this seedy nightclub. So it was a perfect one to fit in, to Prospero's Dream, very easy to fit it in to the huge space station or the huge city in space. And secondly, it worked well because Assault Team 5 is a covert operations squad and they have been tasked with going to Prospero's Dream to infiltrate, disrupt, maybe even destroy the drug trade. So this was pretty much their very first adventure on getting to Prospero's Dream. They did have one getting there, as you may remember from the Iron Coffin. However, they're there, they're settled in place, and they start hearing word on the street about this new wonder drug called jelly milk that's coming out of Club Nebula. So for the basic premise and outline of the adventure, I didn't have to do anything at all. This one fit perfectly. In fact, I made very few other modifications. I changed the name of the drug gang from, I think they're the White Hand. I changed it to Aztec Kings because that fits into a little bit of what's going on Prospero's Dream, where each neighbourhood has its own drug gang, and the neighbourhood the party is staying in happens to be run by the Aztec Kings. So we did that. The actual gang members I fleshed out a little bit more than we have on the adventure, but only really to make sure they fitted comfortably into the Prospero's Dream setting. And I did keep this idea of this gang being largely psychotic, very violent, psychotic gang. And there was talk from the team, first of all, perhaps we can infiltrate, perhaps we can get in undercover. And it was soon made very clear by the actions of some of the gang, such as Hobbs the Enforcer, who has a complete skull tattooed over his face, that, yeah, I don't think you're really going to be able to infiltrate this lot without doing some very nasty things to probably largely innocent people. The Craig Wu connection came about through Craig being a fellow guest at the boarding house the party are staying at. They've been assigned a boarding house run by a former operative, so it's a safe house, but to maintain an illusion of being an actual guest house, she has to take in other guests. One of them is Craig Yu, a young, keen, slightly naive journalist who is chasing down a story about drugs and drug gangs in this area. So he's been off doing some investigation of his own. When the party first meet him over breakfast one morning, they see very clearly that he has this bit of tech in his ear. One of the team is a tech head, so he recognised it straight away. They had a little chat about that, though Craig was very secretive about what he is doing, for obvious reasons. So this means a few days later, when they're investigating Club Nebula, they're thinking of a way to get in and have a look around. Finding this ear and knowing that it belongs to Craig Wu gives them another hook, another reason to get into the place. Craig, of course, has been sneaking around before the party arrived and he's been caught. He's been taken into the club. They've clocked the bit of tech on his ear. Okay, we'll get rid of that. And the players, of course, knowing that this records sounds, plugged the device into one of their little e-pads and it played back the last recording made, which gave me a lovely opportunity to drop this into the proceedings.
Wait, I didn't see anything. I love Club Nebula. Stop! What are you doing? No, please, no! Ah! Ah!
Yeah, so unbeknownst to the players, Craig Wu is currently strapped into a dentist chair somewhere in the bowels of Club Nebula, and a man is approaching him who, well, he's got a white coat on, but I don't think he's a proper dentist, but he has got a drill in his hand. Things are looking bad for Craig. The major tweak I made really was just to the map and the layout. Again, on the trifolds, the maps are very basic, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. How much detail do you need for this sort of thing? If you're going into a nightclub, everyone knows what a nightclub looks like. What I did was just added a few more rooms just for a little bit of extra interest. And also, in my time, I've worked in a lot of clubs, either out front on the door, sometimes a bit of bar work, but more often as a musician. I've played an awful lot of clubs, so I have a good idea of layout. And one thing I noticed with this was there was no rest area for the staff, no toilets for the staff, or a little stock room or anything like that. So as you can see here with my own map, I just added a few bits and pieces in, but kept the contents largely the same. There's going to be a few things of interest in here. Obviously, we've got poor old Craig strapped into the chair, undergoing unwanted root canal operations. But there is some other information as well. We've got the Jelly Milk Lounge, where the drug is being administered. We've got storage of the drug in a large sort of fridge room out the back. And This place is also the home and hideout for most of the Aztec kings. So, of course, we've got gang members running the place on the door, the bar, etc. But there's also some of them in the back here lounging around, playing cards, doing whatever it is they do. And they, of course, are going to provide the main encounters for the party as they search through the club. Now, the first thing is, how do they get in? We have a fire exit at the side, which is why the group are hanging around in the alleyway, and we have the main entrance at the front. The cover story for the team, by the way, which was kind of a good idea, but maybe not, was they're here as part of a stag weekend. And in order to, really play that part out, they're all wearing loud Hawaiian shirts. Of course, this is Prospero's dream. This is a nightclub. There's cameras everywhere. How they dealt with that later on, well, that's another story. But they're hanging around outside this fire exit when the door opens and one of the gang members comes out to put stuff in the rubbish. Now, in my mind, I thought, well, what they do here, they probably dink him on the head. Great, they're sneaking in through the fire exit. But they asked him rather politely, oh, can we go in through here? And he, of course, said no and promptly backed away and shut the door. So they ended up going through the front, paying like normal punters, smile for the cameras. There they are, they're inside. However, I have to say, once inside, things moved rather quickly and they did do very well. Now, the full episodes are going up on the YouTube channel, so if you check out the Club Nebula and Jelly Milk episodes, you can see exactly what transpired and what went down. But things turned violent very quickly when they managed to sneak into one of the back rooms and were confronted by two of the gang members. Fight ensued that the group won. They overpowered these two very quickly. And to me, one of the funniest things with this was sci-fi, right? We've got laser beams and all sorts of exotic weaponry. The thing that proved most effective was the character Eric picking up a table and whacking the gang member across the face with it, getting a critical roll and basically just taking him out in one hit of this table. Very impressive for a scientist. From there, they did a little bit more investigating. They managed to find Craig Wu, took care of the dentist, or the doctor, as he was known. Did a little bit more exploring, but not too much. They wanted to get out pretty quick at that point. And in order to create a diversion to cover their exit, Todd came up with the plan of putting something metallic in the microwave, sort of old Brillo pad, a couple of spoons and forks, the microwave in the kitchen area, setting that on timer. Of course, that causes a big bang, smoke, fire alarm, all that stuff. And they go out under cover of the panic with Todd on the way. I should mention, because they were spotted on the way out by Hobbs, who pulls a shotgun out from under the bar. But Todd bravely put fleeing clubgoers between himself and the shotgun blast, and so was safe and managed to escape. There were a few things that, of course, they had to deal with. The footage from the camera in the bar, they managed to sort that out. They also took out the head of the gang as well, Gregorio, in, rather efficient way. Again, Todd came to the rescue there. I won't go into detail because it's a bit it's a bit nasty, but you can see it all in that episode upload. So, the scenario ran very easily, ran very well. From that initial adventure, with a few tweaks, I was able to drop this very easily into the campaign. And of course, some of the things they discovered are going to lead them to other places, other sort of steps going up the chain, if you like, of this huge drug operation. In fact, they've discovered the whereabouts of the manufacturing plant for the jelly milk. So that's most likely going to be their next hit, their next target. We shall see how that develops. I think overall this maintains the high standard of what I've seen from all these trifold adventures so far. There's just enough detail there to give you the outline of the situation. You can enhance that if you want, but if you're doing a one-shot especially, there's not really much of a need to. And I thought it was nice to see a Mothership adventure with a different setting. Because in fact, just last night I ran Year of the Rat as a one-shot down at Bedford Gladiators, which is a great adventure, don't get me wrong, another trifold, where the party is sent to a broken down casino ship to retrieve the black box. So it is a bit one of those floating vessels in space, and you board and you see what happens. Or there's an abandoned base, you have to go and see what happens. You know, very much working on those, I guess, what we call standard sci-fi tropes or sci-fi horror tropes. So I thought An Ear for Trouble was great because it takes us away from that a little bit, and being on a planet or on a space station gives you a much better chance, much easier to fit into your general campaign, as well as being an excellent one-shot. Okay, thanks again for joining me today. So if you're looking for a good adventure for a one-shot or something you can easily slip into your campaign, highly recommend An Ear for Trouble. If you've run it yourself and you have any interesting tweaks or takes on it, I'd be very interested to hear. Do pop a comment down below. And as always, if you haven't already, please do like, share and subscribe and all that social media stuff that we all have to do these days. I'm off now for a little sip of jelly milk. I'll see you soon.